Everybody, it is Romania Black, and we are starting a brand new sports anime today. So the last 9 months, I've been watching March Comes In Like a Lion. So if you've not watched that series, you can backtrack after this video and go watch March Comes In Like a Lion, and because it's amazing. But I was like, I'm not fully ready for a 9-month to year-long excursion into a sports anime. So I was like, on Patreon, as I usually do, I did a poll to determine what was going to be the series to replace this. And overwhelmingly, you all have chosen Ping Pong, which you know what? Whenever March 1st won last year, and I was like, oh, a sports anime about shogi. Okay, cool. And it ended up being like one of the best anime I watched all year and was life affirming. I was like, okay, I get it now. But if you are new to the channel, my name is Romania Black. I am an English teacher, a speech coach, and just a basic fangirl of all anime, manga, donghua. I love animation. I grew up with anime, and so I missed out on a lot of it during my college years, and now I'm backtracking and getting all the goods in that I had missed prior. And I just love talking about anime and doing discussions after the reactions. So there will be a link down below for the reaction, and then we'll come back and do a discussion of it. But yeah, so I polled Patreon. They chose Ping Pong, which I'm pretty excited about because Ping Pong has been on my polling for several years now. It's always been like a bridesmaid, gotten like second or third place, but it's never been a bride. And so I'm excited to have it here on the channel finally. And plus, it's not a very long anime. I think it's only 12 episodes. So it'll be a nice little sports anime to sandwich between March, usher in that era, and then come later this spring, we'll be starting another sports anime, and I will be having that poll on Patreon, and there'll be some longer anime to choose from on there as well. So, with that being said, I'm super excited. I want to give a quick shout out over to my philanthropy tier over on Patreon. If you are seeing me on YouTube, please feel free to subscribe, like the video, help the algorithm, however y'all know how to do. But I don't get any sponsorship from YouTube. All of my funds for the channel come from Patreon because I like to keep it simple. And I like the support that Patreon has given me. So these special individuals, they not only subscribe on Patreon to me, but they go above and beyond each week to give me some extra funds, so I give them shout outs in my videos. So a special shout out to our philanthropy tier on Patreon, including Alex Cornejo, Anime Annie, Be Happy, Bryant Reed, Dana, Damage3245, Destiny Marie, Devorin, Danny Donmai, Danger Zone, Ichu, Eric, Ghostly Turnip, Fisho, as well as Elfreya, Lyndon, Liam Poles, Matthew Palfinier, Murphew, Maroni W, Nancy Mass Art, Karen I, Nicholas Sunspots Trails, Shimoyama, Translucent Men, and Starman AA. Thank you all so much for your support, and everyone on YouTube and Patreon. I greatly appreciate it. All of my love. Yeah, I have no clue what to expect out of this. I've heard it has very stylistic animation. That is all I know. And if you are new to the channel, you will know that I go in completely 100%, for the most part, blind. I don't like knowing spoilers. I also read your comments. Oh my God, if I can. I usually have a moderator, and if there are comments that are spoilery or give away plot elements or character elements that are yet to come that the show will tell me later on, if those comments contain elements like that, I won't read them. But otherwise, I would love to hear your thoughts about the show and any little tidbits and things that won't be revealed in the show later. That'd be cool to know as we go along. So I hope to read your comments, and I'm super excited. But I have been really wanting to watch this show for a very long time, and I feel like now it's time that we see it. So again, there'll be a link to the reaction down below, and then we'll come back and talk about it in the discussion, and I'll share my thoughts. So with that being said, we are going to start episode 1 of Ping Pong, the animation. And we're going to do that here in 3, 2, 1, and let us begin. Well, hi again. So this episode, there's a lot to talk about, a lot to write down. And if you are new to the channel, welcome to Whiteboard Coon. This is Whiteboard Coon. He is my helper and explainer of all things, because if you're an English teacher, you like using a whiteboard and you like using erasable markers. So there we go. I live off dry erase. But oh my God. So Ping Pong, episode 1. This episode went by really fast. This episode had a lot of energy to it. And that's kind of my main description of this series so far is energy, which is funny because there's a lot of downtime in this episode and a lot of times where Smile's just kind of like, I don't know, I don't want to show who I am, and you're like, okay, come on now. So before we dive any further and talk about this episode as it is, I do want to talk about the 3 main voice actors that I looked up. I didn't look up a lot of the voice actors because we're just getting to know these characters, but we do have Smile, we have Pico, and we have Wong, so we need to go into there. Now, Pico is played by a voice actor who has not done a lot of roles. This was actually Pico's voice actor, who is Fukujiro Katayama. This is their very first voice acting role as Pico, which awesome for them. They've done really, really well in this role already. But this was their first role. And the only thing they've done since then is they have played, I know him as Davis because of the Americanized name, but he played Daisuke in Digimon. I guess maybe the voice actor was replaced, interestingly enough. And they've been in like a movie and another series that I've not seen. So they've only done like 3 different shows. But so Smile, I knew that voice from somewhere. I knew as soon as I heard that voice, I was like, wait a minute. I have not only heard this voice a lot, but I've heard him recently. Yes, the answer is yes, because the voice of Smile is done by Koiki Uchiyama. And if you don't know who he is, one of his very first voice acting roles was as Soul Evans from Soul Eater, which I just found out today, which is blowing my mind that he's Soul Evans. I was like, wait, really? I need to go back and rewatch that series. But he's been in a lot of things. He's been in Hunter x Hunter, of the series that I've seen. He's been in, Ace of the Diamond as a supporting character. He's been in, this was actually one of his earlier roles in Ping Pong, which is pretty crazy. This is one of his earlier roles that he's done. But then, he was in Death Parade, and he was in Haikyuu, and then what else has he done? Oh, I don't know. Maybe, My Hero Academia. He's done that series, but I want to get up to the series that I know him the most from, and that is, he has been Ikuya in Free, which is great. But he's also been in Violet Evergarden, Devilman Crybaby. He's been in Run with the Wind as Takashi, which I just am finishing the book reactions for. But then, as you get further up into the series, into the years, he's also been in Jujutsu Kaisen as Inumaki. And then recently, Uchiyama has played, if I can get to the very top of this, he's Rin from Blue Lock. He's also Tsukishima from IQ. He's Tsukishima from IQ, and he's Rin from Blue Lock. As soon as I heard that voice, I was like, oh, it's Rin. And so I was trying, which is funny. I said he looks like Kageyama, but he's played by Tsukishima's voice actor, which Uchiyama is really good at playing characters that seem very dispassionate, but in reality have a lot of passion under the surface that they just got to get out of their system at some point. And I have a feeling that Smile is going to be doing that over the course of this series. Now, Kong's voice actor is from China, is Yosai Bun. But he has only been in 2 anime. He does not have, they don't list any donghwas to his credit. He has just been in a series called Cheer Boys, which from the thumbnail looks like it's the same animation style. And then he's Kong in Ping Pong. So there's that. But yeah, so he's not, there's not any other credits to his name as far as donghua goes, which is interesting. I think it's cool that they found a Chinese voice actor to play in this series, to actually play a Chinese voice. I've watched some donghua, and so hearing in an anime a donghua voice, I'm like, oh, this is so different. But so let's talk about this series. The series opens up with the idea of this robot, which I'm going to get a better marker than that. We can't start out Ping Pong with that. No. So yeah, we start out with this robot that is there that says they will be there and be reliable and they will be the hero. Now, obviously, said robot would automatically connect to Smile. Because Smile, everybody kind of calls him a robot in the series. So far, the first episode, they make a point that his entire nickname is because he doesn't laugh and doesn't show emotion, so he feels like a robot. But I feel that simmering under the surface is the concept that Smile wants to be a good player and he wants to be a hero, but he's holding back for reasons, and we can talk about what those reasons are. But the fact that the OP focuses so much on the robot, also the robot having wings, seems kind of reminiscent of sort of being like Icarus and the idea of flying too close to the sun, perhaps. So maybe in the past, Smile showed off their skills and it backfired on them or led to a very bad encounter. And since then, Smile's like, I don't want to show off those skills anymore because I don't want to ruin friendships. I don't want to... We'll talk about Pico and Smile and Wong's game against them. But I feel like Smile's holding back. And that the wings and everything, and then flying towards the moon instead of the sun. Although I do love the witch's broom flying next to them. I'm like, is there going to be relevance to that? Is Pico the witch? I don't know. But yeah, so we cut from that instantly to these boys. And I say this as teenage boys talking about somebody's fly being open. I hung out with a lot of guys in high school. I had some friends that were girls, but I hung around with a lot of guys. And this talk was all over the place. And they were just like, oh, come on, whatever. And they always treated me like one of the guys. And they were just like, you're fine with it. I'm like, sure. But this talk was everywhere. And I like the fact that we see the reflection of it in Smile's glasses. But Smile obviously does not seem part of it. He doesn't feel like he fits in with these teenage boys. Right? Okay, let's just get this out of the way. The animation style is very acquired. I'll be honest with y'all. It is not my favorite style of animation. I see it used. I see it used a lot in modern animation, in modern anime. I'm not against it. I don't dislike it. It has to serve a purpose. And I think for this series, it works really well. There are some series where I see it and I'm kind of like, I feel like it just depends on the series and what the angle and use of it is, because I feel like some people might say, oh, well, does it come across as, and I'm going to say this and a lot of people in the comments are going to be like, oh, that's not what it means. This isn't the correct word, but because it has such a jagged and raw look to it, I could see how some people would think that the quality isn't of like, Violet Evergarden, which that's like comparing an apple to a raspberry, But in the same respect, I feel like this style of animation is the most effective in two scenarios. One, when it's describing a very fast-paced, frenetic, energetic energy, and you need this kind of loose and kind of almost chaotic style that's very rough and ready. And I feel like for Ping Pong, what we've seen so far with the action scenes, yeah, this style works really, really well for it. It's stylistic, it has energy and frenetic motion. It seems like it's going to lend itself very handedly when we get into the actual matches. Like, I hope we see Wong versus Smile. That's why I feel like this episode was such a tease, because they're just going to build up and be like, oh yeah, who knows if Wong and Smile are going to face each other. They're going to face each other, damn it, and I want to see it happen. But the other reason and other way that I could see the style being effective is if you're talking about, like, depending on the theme, in my opinion, a teenage coming of age story, this style is perfect for. And I felt like this same style was used in Devilman Crybaby, which I've seen, and it's very effective there as well. Maybe it had a little more finesse with Devilman Crybaby, but this kind of style is perfect for talking like coming of age stories, because it's about characters going through puberty, going through their teenage formative years. You're literally forming who you are, so the animation being like ragged around the edges, it fits that vibe perfectly. And that's kind of why I like the style for this series in particular already, because it seems to fit really well. Now, it's not usually my cup of tea, but in this series, I'm kind of on board with it already. It makes it stand out, and it's just kind of raw, and I sort of like that about it. So, but anyway, Smile and Pico, they've joined this club. They are clearly kind of in the upper echelon of the players there. They're really good, which makes when Pico loses to Wong, hit all the more harder, because they're like schooling these guys and they're schooling people that have years of experience, and then Wong comes in and it's like, oh, brick wall instantly. Okay. And confidence cut down, especially for Pico. So we're going to talk more about that. But the one Yamada, the captain he looks like Cynthia from Rugrats with the hair and possibly like a Jujutsu Kaisen character. He's interesting because he's the older student that is kind of like, and even when Smile says, yes, sir, there's kind of like a, sort of a mocking tone to it because he's mad that Smile and Pico have come in and they've kind of schooled him and he's no longer top dog anymore. So, all right. So as far as Smile goes, we get a couple of notations about their skills. So we find out that he is right-handed. He's right-handed. They also say a shake hand, which I don't know what that means. I'm assuming we're going to find out. And his racket, which I'm assuming is his paddle, maybe? His racket is a double reverse. And then his style is he's a chopper. So he just hits it back and forth. Really, I say that like it's so simple. But first and foremost, I could not do this. His name is Tsukimoto Makoto. No wonder they call him Smile. Tsukimoto Makoto rhymes and is a little bit hard to say. So I'm glad we're calling him Smile. Good. First and foremost, I come from an athletic family. My mother and father are both athletic. My brother and I, it completely skipped our generation. My brother and I have no hand-eye coordination. We are terrible at sports. And my parents are like, cool. So my mother coached basketball and she was a point guard and she was really, really good. And I played center one year and was terrible. And afterwards, when your parent that's a coach tells you that it's okay if you don't play sports anymore, that's usually a sign. So yeah, I don't have great hand-eye coordination. I like sports, thus I like sports anime. Not good at ping pong. Would be actually quite terrible at it. I also like that Uchiyama plays like Tsukishima, who has the glasses, and also plays Smile. Definitely channeling that. I feel like for Tsukishima's role, he was channeling Smile's inner apathy here. But I also like the little moon that is on Smile's jersey. It kind of goes with the little hero flying in front of the moon at the very beginning of the series. So yeah, just like I said, the animation style fits perfectly for this type of this animation, this back and forth. It makes it look interesting and it makes it look intriguing. Also, this old man that is the head coach, he is intimidating as hell. And one thing this style does that is really kind of like off-putting is they put him so far into the foreground, and then when he's like walking around, the angle makes him look like he's about to attack someone. It's intentionally done, and it's very effective. But he's a little man. He's this little old man, but he comes across as being so intimidating in this episode. And he reminds me of like my thesis chair. His name was Dr. Savage, which is the best name ever. And he was this little old man, like in his 70s. He was about to retire, and he was this little old man, and he was so smart, but he was so smart and biting. And the way he would say something, you're like, well, what do you think I should do for this project? And he's like, well, and would pull out this stack of books and was instantly intimidating. I was terrified of him. I respected him. He was super nice, but I was so intimidated. That's the vibe I get from this cat, Mr. Koizumi. Koizumi is the one that is the main coach, it looks like. So he seems to see the innate ability within Smile. He seems to be able to tell that Smile is holding back and that he has talent that he's not showing, much like Wong figured out rather quickly, and nobody else really seems to know. But then they talk about the Pinhold kid with the bowl cut, and they're like, oh, that's Pico. He, they're like, we don't want him to quit, so get him to come back. And they're like, well, he's our star player, but he's no match for Hoshino. And so he was skipping practice that day. Interesting. They say he's probably at the tennis hall near Odakyu Station. I love Smile's sarcastic attitude where he's like, I'll draw you a map so you can go find him. The animation style also reminds me of like early 2000s Western animation. There were a lot of shows that kind of had this same vibe to it that you would see on Adult Swim or something. And again, it's not personally my cup of tea, but it fits very well here. It works for this series. And they're like, yeah, Hoshino and Tsukimoto came along. He's not a starter anymore. I find that this series throws you into the world building. It just like picks you up and tosses you into the pool, explains nothing, and they just give you titles, give you positions, and they're like, figure it out. And you're like, okay. So I like that. I like that we have the guy drawing on the whiteboard where he's trying to figure out what moves mean what. I feel like it's kind of like tennis. I know ping pong's table tennis, but it's kind of like it where, isn't it like game, set, and match at 11? You have, I watched Stars Align like 5 years ago. So, but isn't it where there are like sets of 11, and if you get 11, it's a different set and you win that round? I'm sure that they will explain it as we go. I'm sure we'll get that as we go through the series, but I already like that the series is focusing on not just the sport. The best sports anime, as we all know, are the kinds that don't just focus on the sport, but they focus on the characters. And I'm a character-driven person when I watch series. Like, the plot may meander to some weird-ass places. I'm fine with that. The style may be off-the-wall batshit crazy. I'm fine with that. But if it has good characters and I'm invested in them, solid. And so far, Smile and Pico, I am invested in them. I love them as a pair. I love their friendship. I'm rooting for them. And I want to see what Smile can do because I feel like he's holding back. But I like that they give us the world building. They just throw us in. They expect us to understand how table tennis kind of works. And you're like, okay, ping pong. And then they don't really give us any explanations except I didn't realize that ping pong players had to run. But it kind of makes sense, though, because they have to have a lot of stamina and good reflexes. So they have to have stamina and energy to be able to move around the table. It's kind of like my dad played football. Like, his team went to state, did all this. My dad was a rear tackle was what he was. And so he played football and was really into it. And my brother is a huge guy. He's like 6'4". He's like 6'4", 280. And my dad in high school was like, oh, hey, if you want to play football, we can start practicing together and work out and everything. And my brother was like, oh, cool, like lift weights. And my dad's like, oh, yeah, and we'll get up at like 5:30 and start running. And my brother's like, running? Football? And my dad's like, yeah. So, sometimes when you look at sports, you don't think of all the things that go into playing that sport. And I did not think that ping pong would involve running, but it makes sense why it would. So that's kind of cool too. So this episode does a really good job of framing Pico. We come in, we get to see Pico. He's this young kid. We don't know exactly how old he is, but we feel like he's just graduated from middle school, so we think. And he's like, yeah, here we go, Pico. So his actual name is Hoshino Yukata. I love that they're Pico and Smile, and their nicknames have nothing to do with their names. It's wonderful. So we have Pico, and Pico is also right-handed. He is a pin hold. So I feel like maybe that's how they hold the paddle. Like, if you hold the paddle like you hold a pin, and maybe if you shake it, it's like you hold it like that if you're a chopper. Okay. So his racket is a soft front. A soft front. Okay, we're going to break this down in a hot second. And his style is offensive, and it is close to the table. Okay. So if I'm taking a hard guess, I'm going to guess that the racket is just the style of racket it is, because they talk about that Wong has like the Chinese rubber that's sticky, so the ball like adheres to it a little bit more. That gives you maybe more control over it, which is kind of cool. But I could see how that would be. It's kind of a double-edged sword unless you know what you're doing, maybe. But I bet that the racket, the double reverse, is that maybe the rubber's on both sides a certain way, so you can use it either way. And if you're a chopper, you would need to do that. And if you're a shake hand, you're holding it like this, so you're possibly like shaking it like that, like a maraca or something. Maybe that would adhere to that. And if you're a chopper, you're just constantly moving it back and forth like that, like your chop suey. Whereas the racket being a soft front means that you have one side that's meant to hit it, and you're offensive close to the table, so you just hit it without. I'm sure there are different styles and techniques, and we're gonna get that for Wong, so I'm excited. But like I said, I like that this series, we get the intro, it frames us with Pico being the expert ping pong player. Like the people in the club say that he's one of their starters, he's their best player, and they talk about how he schools the guy that's had 10 years of experience and makes him look bad, like does all the crazy moves, like when he does it under his legs and reverses it, like he does all these really fascinating things. And they set that up for us and then have him lose quite handedly against Wong. And it's like, oh, the league just, the gap widened instantly. And that's interesting. So Smile plays his video games, which is tied to, again, the robots on the train as he goes to pick up Pico. And Pico, I like that this woman that's like their granny is in this house by the train station. And she seems to think like, you know, why are you doing this club? What are you getting out of it? She even seems to think that you're better than what you're doing. Like what's the point of it? And I feel like maybe, we don't know this for sure yet, but maybe Smile is trying to get Pico a place and help him. I loved when the grandmother said, have you thought about coaching kids? And Smile's like, I can't teach kids. I never know what they're going to do and I don't like them. He's so honest. He's like, I don't like kids. And I'm like, yes, what a king. I love him already. He just speaks his mind. He's so honest, which is fascinating to me because on the one hand, you have Pico, who is pretty straightforward and honest and very open with their opinion. And then you have Smile, who seems honest, but then when you get to Ping Pong, he's keeping a lot of secrets. And I think that that's fascinating. I'm like, why are you doing that? So, but yeah, he's like, if I make it to the top, this place will gain some prestige, right, Granny? And she's like, that's the same cliche all snot-nosed kids use, Pico. She's like, don't be like that. So then Smile leaves, and Pico talks about how even though Smile is difficult, he's a good friend, and he probably won't act like that forever. He's interesting. He's been my friend for a long time. He said, and that Smile son to you. So then they ask the next day at the club meet why Smile does not, in fact, smile. And he says, I just don't like getting emotional. I don't like laughing. I don't like getting angry. I just don't show emotions. And they're like, well, what do we do with that? I do love that we have the moon and the stars on their polos. Like most of the guys there just have plain polos. Smile has the moon and Pico has the star. And I'm like, oh, you guys go together like PB&J. But Pico's the one, like Smile just wants to like play and not be a burden and just practice and do his thing. But Pico, he can't go 5 minutes without insulting somebody, and drop insults he does, where he says that just because you dropped out of the womb a year earlier, why do you think you're all high and mighty? And I'm like, oh, I love that he just takes the senpai kohai thing and just sinks it instantly. And of course they get pissed off about it. And so they want to challenge him, and they're like, oh, don't get challenged by him. And I love that Smile is also constantly like, even though they're friends, Pico and Smile, and their age difference doesn't seem that huge, Smile definitely has kind of a parental vibe around Pico, because he's like, oh, if you drink that condensed milk, you're gonna get diabetes from all the sugar. And Pico's like, really? Like there is kind of like an older brother, you know, kind of chiding sense to him. And they just decide that they're gonna ditch practice and go to the exchange student school and just sneak right in. It reminded me of Haikyuu. It reminded me of Haikyuu when two of the characters sneak onto campus at another school just to spy on the opposition. I was like, all right, come on, sports anime trope. But they have the exchange student coming from China. And they talk about Smile being type B, which I thought it meant type B personality, which Smile appears to be, but I will argue is probably the opposite in real life. But maybe that's a term within Ping Pong. So Pico wants to go check out the Chinese exchange student because he believes that it's competition. They get to see what someone from the national, like other countries are like, and from the national leagues. And they're like, it seems like it'd be something that would be worth their time. Again, when that coach walks up and he's like, lessons, so creepy. But yeah, they keep playing. I love the montage. And the coach makes a really good point by saying that Smile is losing on purpose. He's not playing as strong as he could. And I think that Smile wants Pico to keep practicing, and he doesn't want Pico to become dissuaded or to become to have his mood dampened by playing ping pong. I feel like maybe Smile has had an event happen in the past that kind of like drained his confidence, and so he wants to kind of be this mentor role and encourage Pico and keep him playing. And it's a delicate line, honestly. It really is. Like, there's, you got to ride a really fine line if you're a coach. Someone said, I actually saw this at a football game I was watching over lunch today, where they said that coaching is an art, not a science. And I think that's very true, because you have to ride a very delicate line. You want the player to have competition so that they keep growing stronger and they foster this hunger to want to grow stronger. But then at the same time, it's balancing, like, how much competition do you want? Do you want them to get trounced? Will they be dissuaded if they get beaten too badly? Like, do you want them to have competition, but do you want them also to feel confident in themselves? Like, it's a constant balancing act. And I help coach an athletic team. I mean, we give speeches and stuff, but it's still athletic. There's mental training and vocal training as well, but there's legit competition, and it is kind of that, do you take them to a tournament with lots of competition, or do you worry they're going to feel like dissuaded? Like, how do you balance that? Do you let them go to easy tournaments and then they get a false sense of security and a false sense of confidence that when they do get to the big leagues, it's instantly crushed? How do you balance such things? And Smile seems to, despite saying that he doesn't want to be a mentor or a teacher or a coach, he is trying to do some coaching, I feel, with Pico. And it all kind of gets trounced on a little bit when Pico challenges Wong. But yeah, I really, really love the animation style in this series. It works very, very well. Also, I love their uniforms. They look like Mob Psycho, which is great. They talk about Bubblegum, which one's going to be the better one. And then I wonder if the first years are doing laps right now. And Smile's like, of course they are. So yeah, Pico talks about having fun with Smile. And I feel like that's another reason why Smile doesn't want to dissuade Pico, because he does value his friendship and he doesn't want Pico to become angry at Smile because of how good he is. So again, it's a delicate balance. So then we have Kong come in. Kong is from China. And Kong is lamenting that they should have stayed abroad in Europe. After just finishing season 2 of Blue Lock, it's like the international student coming to get Japan to whip itself into shape. It's, a tried and true trope, but so yeah, I like him doing the manicuring of his nails, which I've seen in Kuroko's Basketball. I've seen in Haikyuu. It's, again, lovely sports anime trope. Love it. But so here we have Kong, and I'm sure I say Wenge wrong, but we have Kong. He's our Chinese exchange student. He is also right-handed, and he is a Chinese pinhold. So he's kind of like Pico. And he has his racket is a double reserve soft side. So he has not only the soft side, but it's double reverse. So it's like a mixture of Pico and Smiles. And his style is similar to Pico's, where it is offensive drive. That to me is interesting and telling, because I also like that we have the primary colors. We had red for Smile, blue for Pico, and yellow for Kong, our 3 main characters, I feel. But I feel like Kong is a mixture of the 2 of them in some sense, but also he's kind of more like Pico. So if you have Smile versus Kong, and Smile's able to do well against Kong, then that automatically would tell us, the audience, that he would be able to do well against Pico. So there's that too. So yeah. But his whole style, I love the way Kong is set up, where he has the dramatic poses. He does the hair slicking back, like combing them back. Like, it's so good. I'm like, what are you, Seto Kaiba? And he looks really appealing. He's such a great antagonist. And he has this like air about him. And he talks about growing up and being taught since an early age. He was groomed to be a ping pong player. And because he slipped up, he's now forced to come to Japan, apparently. Now, is there more to the story? Probably. Are we only in episode 1? Yes. Will hopefully we see more with Kong? I am certain of it. But he was really rude, and kudos to the one coach for translating, being like, oh yeah, like trying to like ease the blow. But I mean, I don't blame him for feeling like he took a step back when he sees that the competition isn't good. But I feel like he's going to get on to Smile being like, you should challenge yourself with better competition than you're doing right now. And Smile's going to be like, mind your own business. But we'll see. These boys just walk right in. I was also getting March Comes In Like a Lion vibes at the top of the rooftop where the one guy is telling Kong, he's like, we own you. And I was like, ooh. That's an interesting twist, because Kong was very rude down in the gym and being like, oh, you Japanese people are awful, and why can't you be better like us Chinese ping pong players? And then they get to the rooftop and the coach is like, we own you. And it's like, the animosity is palpable in these scenes. Palpable. And it felt like March Comes In Like a Lion with them like stylistically yelling in the wind-blown rooftop. And he's like, as long as I win. That confidence. I really like Kong's design. He looks so good. He's like, you saw those guys, didn't you? I could beat them with my forehead. That's amazing. So yeah, they check out his... Also, one thing I love, stereotypical teenage boys just rip off the cover and like, hey, look at this cool paddle. I did that once. I was in, when I was a freshman in college, so probably just barely older than these guys. And there was this mandolin sitting on the table in the speech room. And I like picked it up and started playing it. It was like, because I was 18 and stupid. And it wasn't mine to touch, but I did it anyway because I was a teenager and I was an idiot. And then the guy that owned it came in and he's like, oh, my dead father gave that to me. And I was like, I hope it didn't break anything. So yeah, foot in mouth moment. I can relate to Pico and Smile. So, yep. But yeah, I like this idea of the Chinese sticky rubber, like sticking the ball there. And Smile's like, maybe we should leave. And that's when Kong shows up. Well, first they play the game. And I love that the acoustics of this academy, where you can hear the ball from up on a windy rooftop. I love it. I love the gesture of, can you hear it? It's so good. And then he's like, can't you hear the cutting back and forth? Like, oh, it's such a good scene. I love it. And they're like, we need to go downstairs so we can hear it better. Love, 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 love. So they go downstairs. Meanwhile, the team with Yamada's making the first year's run, and the coach is like, look, they're not a track team. Let's not make them run anymore. So the two of them are playing, and that's when Kong shows up, and Kong says you should play at full strength to respect your opponent, which Smile is not doing. Everyone around them except Pico is noticing, the experienced players like the coach and like Kong, they are noticing that Smile is not playing at his full potential. And they're like, you might want to start doing that. So it's not doing your friend any service. And he proves it by facing Pico and completely trouncing him. But I loved the energy of this. This entire scene and everything was so good. I was just absolutely living for the animation. And like when they bounced the ping pong up into the air and then they showed a plane representing it. Great. But yeah, poor Pico. I like that Kong is like, I'm going to take out my anger and my repressed emotions by beating you horribly at this game. And he wants to challenge Smile, but Smile's like, not today. We got 10 more episodes. Before we reach that point, I did like the final animation where we saw Pico jump for the ball and just miss it, and it was like splat. That part was really, really good. I liked that. But yeah, but Kong thinks he's found a worthy opponent. If he can eventually play Smile, it will have all been worth it, right? There are guys like him here, and that's enough. And then we had Smile singing the beautiful little song where he was like humming a little melody. Felt very Trigun. And Pico's like, yeah, the song's kind of weird, but he doesn't, dislike it. I think it's interesting to hear Smile sing the little song because, again, he talks about being a robot and not having emotions. but then he's humming the little tune, and it's like, no, you do have emotions. You do have them buried in there. You just don't want to show them off, right? So yeah, I really like this series so far. It's giving me vibes. There's a little tiny aspect of it that is reminiscent of Haikyuu. There's a little bit of aspect that's reminiscent of March Comes In Like a Lion. There's a little smidgen of Blue Lock traced in there. There's even some Kuroko's basketball, which I thought was pretty cool. That I kind of liked about that as well. I'm trying to remember what I said I was going to talk about with Kuroko's basketball in this, but I can't quite remember. But I'm sure it'll hit me if I'm looking at the reaction, and then I'll make note of it for episode 2. But I'm super excited to hear your thoughts down below of what you all think of Ping Pong so far. We have information. We're going to do something with it, and I'm curious to see where it goes. So I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and yeah, I'll be back, and hopefully Whiteboard Kun will be back too next week as we look at episode 2 of Ping Pong, the animation. I'll see you there. Bye.